Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me tonight as we present Sounds of the Diaspora, Artist to Artist, a conversation with yours truly, Dion Parson. I'm really excited, man, about our guest tonight. This is someone that I met many, many years ago when he was in high school. I was in New York fresh myself, finding my way, but I met this young man and watched his career blossom into, the master musician that he is today. And I want you guys to hear his story. So please join me and welcome to Sounds of the Diaspora, a great drummer, educator, arranger, producer, and director. Found that out today as well. Join me in welcoming the wonderful, talented, great Mr. Ali Jackson.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Just honored. Dion, thank you for the great introduction, and just very enthused to hear about all of the things that you've been doing and just the work and to stay connected. And that's what I love about this program. It connects those that are from the diaspora, keeping it synthesized and moving forward. So thank you very much.
You're more than welcome, man. I'm smiling as I see you because it just brings back so much memories. And a couple of weeks ago, as I walked into Jazz and Lincoln Center to pick up my drums and see you playing, and we just started talking. The first thing I said, I gotta have you on my show. You was like, great, give me a date, and we just like solidified just like that. After not seeing each other for a couple of years, it was a real treat to just run into you, unexpectedly, and here we are, man. So. Thanks for agreeing to do this, man. We're gonna have some fun tonight.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
Right. So our audience is like, okay, so D's excited. This guy Ali Jackson is excited. Who's Ali Jackson? So you're from Detroit. Grew up in a musical family. Let our audience know. Let our audience know about your musical upbringing.
Well, I'm a third generation musician. Based in Detroit on my father's side. They come from via Mississippi in the Delta, playing blues, guitar, fiddle, reels and jigs and all of that, migrating up north. And then on my mother's side of the family, European classical musicians. So I was just born into a musical environment. And my father was a very heavy educator, but just a cultural griot. He shared so many things about just the history and the culture. And my father, Ali Jackson Sr., was a bassist, was in the Detroit scene for many years. Went to New York in the 50s, played with some of everyone, Yusuf Lateef, Boo Boo Turner, Wilbur Hardin, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, all of the masters. And my uncle Oliver Jackson, his younger brother, he was a great drummer and band leader. And so he came out of the more swing era of playing, like pre-bebop. And so I just had that environment in my family. So that was the standard. And if you, kind of old school, if you want to do this, you had to do it full stop or don't do it. But
right.
I was in that environment. So I was very... when you're a kid, that's just all you know. So it's all environment.
Right.
That was the environment. And, no one held back. They did not hold any punches, literally and figuratively.
Well, man, it shows in just how your career has just, been over the years. When I met you, man, you were in high school. I think you may have been like 17 or maybe even 16. And it was on one of your, may have been, was that your first trip to New York City?
It wasn't my first trip, but it was my first trip as like a young adult. And I was with my boys, you know, my brother and my cousin. My cousin's Carlos McKinney, my brother Khalil Jackson, and great tenor saxophonist J.D. Allen, and the late Tassili Bond. We all came to New York at the, you know, we'll say like 90, maybe yeah, 1990, 91, around that time. Uh, and just to have the experience of being in New York City. And we had a band called Legacy, the Legacy Quintet, which we played together all the time. And we, you know, we played the music, you know, of the tradition from standards and everything, and worked on new material and guys from your generation. Or, I mean, we're closer in age, but I always respect my elders, even if it's just a couple of years older. I was just raised that way, so it's always respect.
Right.
We played a lot of the music, you know, of our time. You know, we're strongly influenced by obviously Miles Davis's, both of his bands, and you know, all of the Detroit musicians. So you had a group called Straight Ahead, which all women group, which influenced us. You know, Jerry Allen is from Detroit, Bob Hurst, Kenny Garrett. Um, you know, so all of the Detroit people we all looked up to, and just tried to model our path kind of around them. Like, you know, they kind of paved the way, and we just, there were many roads, many paths leading to the same road, or highway, I should say. So
Right. That's beautiful, man. And was drums always the instrument of choice? I mean, I know I know you write and compose, so obviously you have other skill sets, but was drums always your choice?
that was the natural choice. Drums was the natural choice that I guess spiritually I took to, as a baby, like since I can remember. So 2, 3 years old, I could always remember playing drums, pots and pans, all of that. You know, my mother was, and my mother is a pianist, and my father was a bassist. So and I was the first child. So I guess the drums was the natural spiritual
Right.
lane
Around
that
out
I
the
went
rhythm
into.
section.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, since I can remember, it was drums, and I probably started playing piano at the age of 4.
Okay.
And my mother gave us piano lessons. Like, she would give us, you know, basic reading. Like, I learned to read music probably before I could read words, and
Okay.
that's true. I get my mom on here. She was like, "Yeah, well, I did that." um,
Yeah.
so I started playing piano at the age of 4 or 5, but drums was always my primary instrument. And then it went into not just, you know, traditional like snare drum and drum set, like the Rubanks, the Wilcoxon, um, you know, marching literature, along
Right.
with um, you know, fundamental grooves of the music, you know, which my father was obviously the not only the catalyst, but the resource for like playing the drum kit, and what I should be doing, like from a fundamental level. So I learned very fundamental uh orientation to like music, like basic things first, and then just building on that. So I've always played drums, but then I played piano simultaneously. And I have really interesting story of just me playing piano, because my father, he was a stickler on me learning the piano. And when I was younger, I kind of like, there was times where I was just like, man, I don't want to play piano. So I learned all of my chords. So basic, like 2 5 1s, major chords, minor chords, dominant chords, you know, diminished, half, all of the kinds of chords. So he'd have a system that's called the cycle, or the color wheel, and it's based on the cycle of fourths and fifths. So this is our training. My brother and I, our training is, I mean, we talking, we're 4 years old, man, 5 years old, 6, 7, 8, like, and that was like religion every day. You know, you have to play the color wheel, cycle of fourths, fifths, like 2 5 1 progressions, all the different 2 5. So I knew how to do it, and so we learned how to play it, but we didn't have the names attached. So it's interesting, like the teaching method. It's like you learn how to do it, then you could assign whatever it's called after, but you could
Right.
do it.
But you could hear it. You could
You
hear
could
it.
you could hear it, and you could do it.
Yeah.
It just didn't. It was nameless. So I knew all of my chords by the time I was like 5, 6 years old. because I just knew the cycle of 4. So you knew every chord.
Right.
And then it's like, that's this. And you're like, oh, okay. You just apply the name to what you actually can do. So, which gave me a huge advantage, as a young musician, because I could understand music not only from a rhythmic perspective, but from a harmonic perspective.
Right.
So
And I just want to interject because
yes,
you've
please.
said something really, really important. Being a drummer is that it gave you a whole nother understanding music from not just from a rhythmic perspective, because I think that's one of the challenges with a lot of young drummers that both you and I know, that they just only know the drums. That when it comes to harmony and theory and following the music and understanding that, it's a different challenge. So if you could just expand on that, explain to our audience how that helps you as a drummer understanding the harmonic structure of songs.
Absolutely. I would say, even before you're a drummer, are you a musician? So being a musician means you understand all of the elements of what makes music.
Right.
So if you don't understand the elements of what makes music, you're uninformed in whatever instrument it is that you actually play, because you need to understand what makes music, and every instrument has a role or a function. And so learning those things first is understanding the function. So another function of music obviously is, harmony, theory, melody, and how those work, form. So all of those are major components in the structure of creating music. So if you don't have those things, it's very difficult to create music and understand your role in the music and understanding what others are doing in conjunction to what you're doing. So a lot of people's mentality is like, this is what I'm doing, but they're not or not as invested in what others are doing.
Exactly.
So it's important. I say all of the practice is generally for you to understand your function and what you're doing, so you're freed up. So if you're very clear on your function and what you're doing, then you can actually pay attention to all of the other things, which will help inform what you do in conjunction to making good music. In the short, that's the short version.
And I appreciate you saying that, man, because not everybody gets that, bro. Not everybody gets that.
It's just more investment. That's all.
Yeah. Especially from a drummer's standpoint, man. So many drummers, they just resist dealing with the piano, and I was fortunate to be introduced to the trombone in elementary school, so that was my first instrument through high school. So by the time I transitioned over to actually pursuing the drum set, I had a whole understanding of harmony and melodies and rhythms and counter melodies, because the trombone is a counter melodic instrument, especially in marching band and concert band. So I was able to have that information before I even really took my first drum lesson. So I understand music. It's really important. Thank you for explaining that, man. I really, and you did a great job. I really enjoyed that.
Hey, it's all information, and sometimes just having understanding of how things work will create curiosity. And I think for many people, just the curiosity piece will automatically help you to be informed, because you chase the breadcrumbs, you follow the breadcrumbs.
Right.
And I would like to add that when we listen to music, for people who are not, let's just say, they don't know anything about jazz music, or they don't know anything about like how music is created or how it's made, the primary thing that defines a style or a genre, and for those who never really knew or understood, rhythm is the key component that creates the flavor or the foundation for what a style is. It's rhythm. It's not harmony. It's not, if you played, uh, Beethoven's Fifth, if you swing on it, it would be, swinging. Or
The swing, yeah.
yeah, right. If you put a one drop on it, it'd be like reggae.
It's a reggae.
Yeah, right. So if you put a, whatever, however you want, if you put a batucada on it, or you have a surdo and a caixa and Cuica, it'd be Brazilian.
Yep.
So all of these elements, rhythm is the foundational, how can I say, pillar that shades or colorizes the the flavor of whatever the music or style. And I don't like to think of styles anymore. Genres. There are such thing as styles. Genres created to just label things, but I have to default to the great Duke Ellington on there's only two kinds of music, and that's good and the other kind. And
Right.
and generally what makes music good. So we could talk about that a little bit for people and say, well, I like this or I like that. And let's say, well, okay, well, why do you like it? And generally, most people, if we're talking about popular music or whatever, and it could be ratchet, it could be like the most vulgar lyrics and whatever. But the one consistent thing, what makes people like music in general, is the beat or the groove or the rhythm. That's the thing. Like, if the rhythm is good, generally it's gonna
Right. If it makes you
gonna give
feel good, it makes you
right,
feel good.
and it generally will come from the rhythm, and or a very infectious melody or simple melody, something people can gravitate to. And I always think that music, for the most part, makes you feel good. It can make you sad, but in the melancholy, there is some love and joy even in that. So music is definitely a gateway to the other dimension, and it helps to, you know, um, make us human. It brings out the elements of humanity.
And then that's a great way of describing it, man. And with that being said, man, you've played with some of the world's finest musicians, and in a number of capacities. I mean, I remember seeing you on the road with Dee Dee Bridgewater and other folks, and then of course your tenure with the Jazz and Lincoln Center Orchestra. Tell us about some of the musicians that you've worked with over the years, and how did those situations come about?
That's a
I
very
know.
loaded question.
I know it's a lot.
I What I'd like to say is that, first off, that's a great question. Um, how have all of the musical experiences that I've attained come about? Well, one, being in a music family and growing up in the culture of the music, that gives you a huge advantage. And I say that as it's a bless. Some people wish they did it. It comes with some other dysfunction as well. It's not like having a real ancestral music father and a classical European mom, and just the dynamics of the household or the synergy. But it gives you a foundation of what it is to live music. So
Right.
me living the music as a child put me in situations that normally other people wouldn't be in. So I mean, I've been playing gigs since I was 7, 8 years old. So in a sense, like a child prodigy. So by the time you met me, I was seasoned. I've been playing gigs for 10 plus years already. You know, yeah, about that. So that gives you an experience of knowing how to connect with people. So that's a really great question, because it helps me lead. The question is now going to lead us into, what does it mean to be a musician, and you understanding the role of what a musician is supposed to do with the connection to people, where it's not academic, it's human
Right.
and social. That afforded me opportunities to play with a lot of great people at a very young age. So there's a great trumpeter, Marcus Belgrave, which some people may know or not, but I had the opportunity to work with him as an adolescent. Donald Walden. These are all people in Detroit. Teddy Harris played in his big bands when I was like, early teen. I had the opportunity to study with Lawrence Williams, great composer and
Yeah.
percussionist. Um, so me being in that family kind of background, my father was also very open. he'd send me to Roy Brooks, great drummer, percussionist, composer. So these are all influences that I had as a young, really young person. We're talking, I was under 12 years old. These are the experiences. So very rich upbringing. I met Max Roach when I was about 12. Max Roach gave me a lesson when I was 12. There's actually a video floating around on the internet somewhere of him teaching me how he tuned his drums when I was 12. So
wow.
All of these experiences, they kind of encapsulate all of these. I met Dizzy Gillespie at that same concert. It was for J.C. Hurd, the great late J.C. Hurd.
J.C. Hurd, yeah.
So it was supposed to be a tribute to him, but it ended up being a memorial thing because it became a tribute, but it was supposed to be like a fundraiser gala for him, but he passed before they could do it. So it just became a tribute. And Dizzy was there, man. The who's who of jazz was there, and I happened to be able to be in that environment. So I say all of this to say all of those experiences, just being around, guide you in a spiritual context. So it's not just being technically good, it's understanding the spiritual vibration of what the music is or means, and what it means to other people. And I feel like the older generation imparted the importance of the feeling and the vibration that you have to share the music. Like the basic stuff is, you got to be able to play and know all your scales or your rudiments and grooves and all of that. Like that's given. Now, what are you doing with it?
Right.
Can you touch people with that? Do you understand how to bring that level bring something to the music? So one of the first, and this is for people, I don't like the names are important to some people because maybe they had more marketing or press, and then people will be infatuated with the name. But I feel like just who the people are is more important than whatever publicity or marketing that they receive. But one of the first people of note that I work with, more in a popular context that people would know, was Aretha Franklin. And so I had the opportunity to work with her when I was 16. So I played a few tours with her, and I just learned so much just being in the environment. Moving forward, I had the opportunity to work with Bill Saxton. That was like my first. That was my first, like, cutting my teeth in New York City. That was my first, like, welcome to New York City moment. Who's the first cat you?
That's a hell of a welcoming, bro.
And I was such a fish out of water. And then I have a million Bill stories.
Was that at St. Nick's Pub with the trio with Bobby Forrester on organ?
No, this is pre St. Nick's. This is
okay.
This is like 93. So when I first, like, fresh off the boat, I was fresh off the boat. And I got thrown in. Carlos McKinney recommended me. He said, "Hey man, get my cousin to play drums." And he's like, "Can he play?" Bill, they were like, "Can he play?" He had an audition. We played like 2 songs and he stopped it. And I was like, "Oh man, I must be sad." I was like, man, I messed this up. And then Bill hit me with, I just saw Bill, so he just had his 79th birthday. And he told me where he got this line from. So the line was, he told my cousin, he says, "He's got the slave if he wants it." And I was like, what does that mean? So it means you got the gig. You got the gig.
You got the drums. You'll be there all night, bro, man, because he would do them 2-hour sets, bro.
Oh yeah, he's still doing it. I mean, he's pushing 80. And so he told me where he got that from. That's Roy Haynes. So Roy Haynes, that was what Roy Haynes would say. So it's just a lineage, and it continues to go. And that's also very empowering to be a part of a tradition that's so rich, and it's joy out of adversity, kind of. So anyone that knows about really being a jazz musician, it's not a 9 to 5. it's your life. You dedicate your life to it because you love the music. And when you can get on a bandstand and make unbelievable music with people and share the music with not only where it's esoteric, for people playing for themselves, and we kind of going back and forth with the younger generation now, or just the state of the world. It's not even their fault. The music is to be shared, and your artistry and the work that you put in is to celebrate that work and to uplift the spirits of the people. And it doesn't mean it's got to be esoteric or whatever. It's like the highest level and the lowest level, Kaz would say, is the blues. The blues, and then the blues is in every genre, everywhere on earth you will find the blues. And it's the highest and it's the lowest. You can't play nothing more complicated than it, and you can't play nothing more simple than it.
Right.
And so, yeah. I mean, I can mention more names. People, let's see.
Well, what I know you can mention more names, but I would love for you to touch on your tenure with the Lincoln Center Orchestra, because that was an important time, and you made a major contribution there, and just talk about that a little bit so our audience can know something about that as well.
Okay, well, just for background, the Jazz and Lincoln Center Orchestra, which is its headquarters and location is in Columbus Circle, or they don't even call it Columbus Circle now, right? Columbus is off the board. 60th and Broadway, 60th and Broadway in New York City. It was birthed out of surviving members of the Duke Ellington's orchestra and Wynton Marsalis' septet. It's kind of like a merge. In the beginning, they just presented a couple of concerts a year. It's over 25 years now. So like early 90s, I want to say. So it was just a presenting organization. They presented concerts. They had a board. They incorporated or organized. David Berger was the original conductor of the orchestra, and then Wynton took over the orchestra. And since then, it was just basically a kind of a repertory orchestra for Duke Ellington's music and some of Wynton's music. And since then, it's become the epitome of jazz orchestral music of America. It's like we've played all of the music of jazz, basically. So it's the preeminent orchestra and organization that will present everything from early jazz, Buddy Bolin stuff that's not even recorded, all the way to the most modern stuff that you probably could think of, and everything in between. I started working with Jazz at Lincoln Center probably at the age of 19, 20. I played just as a sub, playing concerts here and there. I think I played the very first Essentially Ellington competition. And for those that don't know, the Essentially Ellington competition is for high school bands. And they play works from obviously Duke Ellington, and they compete. It started regionally or like locally, just New York schools, and then now it's all over. I mean,
right.
I don't know. They got bands coming from Canada, all over the United States, and they had that competition every year. So I think that was '96 was the first one. So I officially joined Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra in 2005. And I was there to 2017. And I came in or took that chair, or my predecessor was the one and only master of groove, one of the great masters of groove of all times, period, all time master. And that's Mr. Herlin Riley. And so coming into that chair, there's obviously high expectation, and I was like in my late 20s at that time. So it was a huge challenge, because it's different. I'll talk a little bit about this. Playing in a jazz orchestra versus playing in a small group is two completely different things. It's like if you're a jet pilot, and then now you got to fly a jumbo jet, or you got to fly a big cargo plane. It's two different worlds. Or you driving a sports car, now you driving a bus. So
Right.
you can't drive a bus like you drive a sports car.
Right.
You got to be a lot more thoughtful every time you make a corner or turn. You got to check your mirrors. You got to,
Right.
it's completely different concept. And at the same time, and there were many talks about this. I talked with the great Wynton Marsalis for years of how to bridge the gap between playing big band, it sounding very much like a big band, but then also shrinking the ensemble to being small group when it's time,
Right.
like solo. So the intimacy of a small group, but then at the same time, then expanding to big band playing and making that seamless. So that is something I definitely could say that something I was very attentive to and focused on, and playing with the same freedom that you would hear a small group play, and then having the structure and the organization of a big band. So
Right.
I will say that I've learned so much just about the canon of the music from multiple ways, and I'll say that you could study music and listen to it and study scores, but it's completely different when you're sitting inside of it and you're playing the music, and you're playing the music on a very high level. You have world-class musicians playing the music, so
Right.
it sounds different and it feels completely different, and your understanding of how the music works changes, or you adapt to be like, oh, that's what a trombone sounds like in this register, or that's what a woodwind section sounds like playing this music, and you're inside of it. So I was very fortunate to be able to have those experiences of being inside of the music, being surrounded by the music. I will say that just the rigors and also the ability of preparation. So playing that chair requires you to do a lot of homework. And a lot
Right.
of people like to play, but not people don't want to sit down and do homework. So the
It's
first
more preparation.
the first couple of years in that band, I'd go home with scores for like 2 years of just, all of Duke Ellington's music score, Count Basie's music, Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, whatever scores I could have to just understand the architecture of how the arrangements look. And so
Right.
understand, what the arrangements, what's required. So really knowing the arrangements, and I prided myself on that. You could go back and listen to the recordings,
And let me just say this for our listening audience, that one of the things that Ali's talking about, a drum score is very minimal. So looking at the orchestra score is the big picture. You're seeing the entrances for the trumpet section, especially the lead trumpet and the lead alto, and you're seeing how they interact and understanding how to fill and set them up. Because a drum score, you just get a lot of slashes. You may have a hit and the pop, ba da da pop. You may have that out of the blue, but as far as understanding the groove and the intimacy of the music, that's what he's talking about. Just taking that score home and studying the entire orchestration of the song in order to be able to fully complement it when you're playing. That's a different process versus just sitting there reading a drum chart verbatim, because you have very minimal information on it.
well, that brings me to another thought. Some people write drum scores very sparsely, and then some people will fill them up, and so you could have an unbelievable amount of information in a drum part where it's actually maybe sometimes too much.
Right.
So write everything in it, and then you have to pick and choose. So I will say that it's really important for people to, that's why you have to learn a lot of music. I'll say that that's like kind of the secret sauce. You must know a lot of styles. So then you can interpret the music. It's really about interpretation. Like, how do you interpret the music? And then it goes back to the great Duke Ellington. It's also taste. So then, what is good taste? How do you develop good taste? I won't give secrets away right now, but first have to sample a lot of music. Right. And so, and to your point, Dion, certain people will write drum parts with nothing in them. And then some people will write drum parts with a pile of stuff in them. And then some people will be very literal and write great drum parts where everything they write, where there should be a hit, that's what it should be. Right. So, and then I'll bring this up, during my tenure with Jazz and Lincoln Center, you had 10 arrangers in the band, including myself. Mm-hmm. So everyone was very thoughtful about who they were writing for, and everyone had a style or developed a style. So, I'll give you a couple of styles. For example, Sherman Irby, his arrangements, generally we called him the king of playdowns, because every arrangement he'd write, it just would sound good from the start. It was very direct and right to it. Right. So whatever hits or drums that he'd have me play are just written in. It wouldn't be a whole lot. It would be swinging. Whatever it was, it would just be grooving. Then you would have someone like Chris Crenshaw, who's on the other end of the spectrum, where whatever he wrote in the drum part, that's what you play. I mean, he would write everything into a T. And it could be very complicated and it could be very involved, but that's what he wants. So that's the other, and actually, to be honest, now this gets more ethereal. So my relationship with Ted Nash, like, I've known Ted a really long time, and then he got to know me just as a musician and composer. So he was like, I'm not writing anything into your part. Because you'll hear it and figure it out. Yeah, right? We'll play through it, and then you write in what you think think should be in the part. Right. So then, and then Wynton on the other end, he's on the other end of that spectrum of Ted, where he would just put everything in my drum part, and I'd have to pick and choose what would make sense or not. So you have two, the juxtapositions of these different people. Or the way that they interpret music. So that was a learning experience as well. Then, a lot of the other guys, and they would always consult me, after you get to play with people, because at a certain point, like I said in the beginning, I'm not a drummer. I'm actually a musician that happens to play drums, which is very different. So I could relate to how they're hearing music. And I always say a hallmark of a great drummer is you don't even know they're playing, but it feels good. You go like, oh shoot, I didn't even. So when guys go like, oh yeah, it's real simple or whatever, man, being simple is very difficult sometimes. It's hard to play simple. You see, especially with drums, you do all this study and you all this homework and all of the things you can do, but is that the most effective way to serve the music? Right. And playing big band, you got to simplify versus like playing a quartet where cats are like just burning out and, and they want that energy. You have to be really aware of the different concepts, man. Listen, I want to continue this conversation, but for time's sake, man, you share some great music with us, and I would love for our audience to hear some of your great music, because not only are you a great, accompanist, a great musician, you've played with a whole, wealth of great, amazing musician. You're also a band leader as well, and you have, I think, 6 CDs? Yes, sir. Yeah, and so I want our audience to hear some of your work as well. I'm sorry for cutting the conversation short. No, we're going to continue it. We're going to bring you back because we have a lot more to talk about. But let's jump into some of your music, and let's play the first song, and then we'll talk about it. The first song you shared with us is a composition entitled 2K Blues.
Yeah, man, that's a great composition there. Somebody said it should be 24 karat blues. This is golden. I love the composition.
Thank you.
So who are the members of the trio?
So long time. So I was talking about Bill Saxton. So my very first tour in New York City was with the bassist Omer Avital, and that forged. I think I met him the same time I met you on that trip when I was like 16, or wilding, being a youngin in New York City. But I met Omer at the jam session, was at the Village Gate, I think. It ended like not long after that. But the bassist is Omer Avital, who is somebody that, he's a brother, a bigger brother. He's a couple years older. So somebody that I truly love and respect. And I mean, his bass playing and musicianship speaks for itself. And then on the piano is another brother from another mother, Aaron Goldberg, who I met, around that same time, 92, 91. Actually, I met him before that. He was auditioning at Manhattan School of Music in 1990. And I played my cousin Carlos McKinney's audition with our uncle Ray McKinney, bassist. And I met Aaron there at the audition at Manhattan School of Music. And so we were like, we were teenagers. So that's, and then you never know, you're going to have lifelong friendships, musicianship, relationships. And that's it. And we developed this, style of playing, very ubiquitous style, like modern and fresh, but also based in the tradition and the language. Like, as you can see, there's a lot of bebop language, but then like a lot of nuance and a lot of interactivity, without compromising the swing, without compromising.
Like one of our listeners said, why do I keep thinking Duke Ellington? So it's like classics, so yes, country. Yeah, well, I mean, it lends itself to that with a fresh sound.
Yeah, I mean, it's modern, but it's still connected to the tradition, and I think that's the best thing. Stay connected to the good traditions of humanity.
Great, beautiful. Well, let's continue. And so, who was that tune? Was that written for someone in particular?
Oh, so the tune was originally, I called it Two Kizzy Blue Izzy, and I wrote the tune on the predating a tour. This was like 1999, where everybody thought the world was going to come to an end, and I was doing a Rising Stars tour with the great Craig Handy. I was a young, and Craig is another big brother, so he gave me the opportunity. He encouraged me to write, compose. He said, "Man, bring some music on the tour." So I was like, "Man, the whole world, everybody was freaking out that it was going to be the end of the world because the clocks, 1999.
Y2K.
Yeah, but exactly. So that's why I called it 2K Blues, and it's based on a blues. So it's a minor blues, but it's long form. So it's 24 bars. It's like a 24 bar blues with 4 chord changes, and that's it. That's the crux of it. It's kind of a burnout. That's why it's like 2K Blue. Everything is going to crash, but a controlled burnout.
Right. Beautiful. I enjoy that, man. And it's and listening to those cats. So I know all of them very well, man. Great trio. So but let's move on to the next song. You shared another composition entitled Spring Sings. So let's check this one out as well. Spring. Yeah, I prefer spring sings to summer bummer so peaceful. I haven't heard a jazz composition like this in 50 years. Thank you for reminding me what jazz is really like. Yeah, nice. There you go. I love the subtle kind of drum beat. Yeah, it's very soothing, man. It's a beautiful song.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Enjoying my tea. Yeah, see why you tilted it spring
Titled
sing.
it. Say it.
Titled it. Okay, yeah, title it. Yeah, man. Beautiful. Some great compositions, bro.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
The backstory with this was I was presenting some shows at Jazz and Lincoln Center on their season. I think this may have been 2013, 2014. And I wanted to have jazz or present Yes Trio. And and every time I present music, I always generally try to write some new music for the project. It doesn't matter, just for the people that are playing, just celebrate the moment. So this is a suite of songs. There are 3 movements, and this was the last movement entitled Spring Singers, and which is also the title track of the movement, and it became the title track of the album, the record that we put out. It came out last year, 2024.
Beautiful. I'm enjoying it, man.
Thank
we're
you.
crushed for time, but I would love to at least squeeze one more in.
Okay. What do you
up with the Jones?
Oh yeah, that's a short one. That came from a ballet that I was commissioned to write for Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, for a commission for the great Hope Boykin Dance, who was a principal there at Ailey for many, many years, and we're longtime collaborators. So we've done about 8 or 9 ballets together. So different works, and this is from 2017, I think.
Okay, well let's check this out. Up with the Jones. Yeah, man. Funky.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Call and response, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of a lot of our music is about that call and response.
Yeah,
And so,
just beautiful stuff.
man, thank you.
Love the horns. Has a Byrd Parker feel. Okay. Yeah. Got some good some response. The audience is checking it out, bro.
Well, I just I always think of you're informed by your, you know, obviously your influences, but then you know you can only be you. So everyone that has, you know, given you a direct lesson, indirect, the music you absorb, it becomes a part of you, and you can only be you, but you can be an informed you. So I try to be as informed as I can, and to keep that reverence for those who have done it before you, because all you can do is keep it moving forward. That's what
There
you're
you go.
supposed to do.
Do your part. Just do your part.
Yes, sir.
Great, man. Well, let's check out this final composition that you shared with us, and this is called Original Optimism. Let's check it out. Original Optimism. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. Beautiful, beautiful arrangement, man. I'm enjoying that. That's with the orchestra, right?
Yeah, it was a piece. Those are all original compositions. The 7 movement work that I was commissioned to write around the centennial, the Buddy Rich centennial. So
Okay.
that's an original piece called Original Optimism, but it's the last piece of a suite of 7. Um, and every movement has like a different thing, but I basically use it's called Living Grooves. Uh,
Okay.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
so I put all of the it's connected all of the elements of jazz from around the world. Like the first movement was called Rain Riff or Rainforest Riff from the Pygmies. It comes from a little pygmy cell, and then the next one is Brothers Batucada, where I had all of the guys in the band playing percussion, like
Okay.
small like Brazilian percussion, like kashishi and ganza and go-go bells, and then
Hmm.
tambourines. And then I had Mike Rodriguez playing pandero. He plays great pandero.
Oh,
And
okay.
and then
Yeah, I saw him in there on the side. Yeah.
yeah, so he was my guest. And then I had Carlos and Dan playing cuica. They did a dueling cuica, so it was like a piece written percussion
Mhm.
for the jazz orchestra. And then
Nice.
that segues into choro changes, which is like a choro piece. And then it goes into Quite Quick, which is a combination between Duke Ellington's band, Count Basie's band, the blues and rhythm changes. And so it's super fast. And it's a call and response between the drums in each section of the band. So that one, and then there's Morito March, which is based around like flamenco music.
Hmm.
And then then there's Eastern Eclipse, which is like from the Middle East, like
Okay.
Thum,
Yeah.
which is inspired by that. So yeah, it's a whole like a journey through the whole planet, you know.
Well, our
With
audience should check it out. They should go
yeah,
back and check that out. I'm sure
yeah,
they can find it live online somewhere, But
yeah.
it's been, man. I hate to cut this short, but we're out
No,
of
no,
time,
no, it's all good, all good.
and we've been cutting it up earlier today too. So we always got a lot to talk about. But Ali, it's such a pleasure and honor having you on the show, man. We're gonna definitely bring you back so we could talk some more about all the great things you're doing, and because we didn't even get into some of your new projects right now, so we definitely have to have you back to talk about it and check out some more music from your other recordings and stuff. But before I let you go, can you share with our audience how they can follow you through your social media and stuff like that?
Yes. Well, first, thank you so much, Dion. You can find me at alidrums.com, ALIDRUMS.com. And you can also find me on the Instagram platform at Ajax Drums, AJAXDRUMS. Um, and then, I'm not on TikTok or all of that. I mean, I'm kind of still old school. I like to be working on the projects as opposed to posting.
Right, I hear you.
Yes, but those are the primary spots you could find me, and I look forward to seeing everyone somewhere soon. You can follow also on YouTube. There's a series I put out called "See You at the Gig." You can find that as well, and there's another series called "Bout It," which is a profile series of great. They were living. 3 of them have now transitioned, but it's about uh, the great mastery of the great living musicians that you can see more for our young audience. And then there's another one called On the Records, where I just break down different concepts about music and how musicians hear music and why their recordings are great or what makes them great goes inside of their minds. So that's all I got.
Great. Well, you got a lot, bro. Man, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Sounds of the Diaspora. Again, it's been a pleasure having you here, and we will definitely look forward to seeing you again in the future. Okay.
Thank you so much. Sounds of the Diaspora with Dion Parson. Check it out.
Take care, bro. That's my good buddy Ali Jackson sharing his his story, man, beautiful story. I've known him for quite some time. But thank you guys for joining us and checking out Ali Jackson. I would like to invite you back next week as we bring to the show another dear friend, another amazing musician. Her name is Helen Sung. She's a pianist extraordinaire. I've had the pleasure of working with her in a number of situations. So come back next week and check out Helen's story on Sounds of the Diaspora. You guys take care. Have a beautiful evening. Thanks for joining us.